This week on ICN, the stories you should have heard, but didn't. The Kansas Supreme Court makes a ruling that shocks homelenders. New data on the housing market, not looking good. Get vaccinated or fired. Ultimatum to New York healthcare workers. Reversal of fortune. The FDIC to borrow from banks. Those stories and more next on Informed Citizen News. Hello and welcome to ICN, Informed Citizen News, October 4th, 2009. Last week, the Kansas Supreme Court held that a company called MERS has no right or standing to bring an action of foreclosure on homeowners. MERS, M-E-R-S, is an acronym for Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, a private company that registers mortgages electronically and tracks changes in ownership. The significance of the ruling is that if MERS has no standing to foreclose, then nobody has standing to foreclose on any of the 60 million mortgages currently reported to be held by MERS. It appears that a court has ruled that about half of the mortgage market has been run as a criminal enterprise for years, which would invalidate any potential foreclosure proceedings. Back in February, ICN reported on the shadow inventory hanging over the housing market. There are roughly 19 million vacant homes in the United States, and roughly 7 million will hit the market over the next few years. While leaders in Washington are trying to inflate confidence in the economy, the housing market continues to go in the wrong direction. This week, David Faber of CNBC had a solid report on this shadow inventory. We have provided a link in our video description section under more info. The Federal Housing Administration has been hit so hard by the mortgage crisis that for the first time, the agency's cash reserves will drop below the minimum level set by Congress. The FHA guaranteed about a quarter of all U.S. home loans made this year, and the reserves are meant as a financial cushion to ensure that the agency can cover unexpected losses. Rapidly rising defaults have burned through the agency's reserves, raising the prospect that it would have to take dramatic action and request help from Congress, which means open up your wallet, America. High U.S. unemployment keeps pushing up the rate of mortgage delinquencies, which in turn drive personal bankruptcies and home foreclosures, as reported by Equifax Inc. Credit Bureau. August marked the fourth consecutive monthly increase in delinquencies, and the report showed an accelerating pace. The mortgage delinquency rate is up 55% from 2008 and has doubled since the crisis began in 2007. Moody's produced a report this week that stated home prices in some areas of the country won't get back to their 2006 peak until the year 2030. The author of the report said, "The scars that this downturn will leave on the economy and housing market will be long-lasting and persist in nearly all facets of the housing industry, including the demand for homes, ownership patterns, home building, and home price appreciation." Many compare the housing market to the NASDAQ stock index, which peaked in the year 2000 at 5,048. 9.5 years later, the NASDAQ is still less than 50% of its bubble peak in 2000. Those hoping for a quick turnaround in home prices may be in for a long wait. A 17-year-old English native will be denied U.S. citizenship for refusing to receive the Gardasil HPV vaccine. She and her family object to its inclusion in a list of vaccinations required for immigrants seeking to become U.S. citizens. Gardasil is designed to prevent cervical cancer for sexually active women. U.S. immigration requires girls and women between the ages of 11 to 26 to receive a vaccine that has known adverse effects and questionable long-term efficacy. The CDC admits that those vaccinated are protected for only 5 years and that there are possible side effects that include death. The young girl applied for a waiver but was denied. Her case is under appeal and could take up to 5 years for a decision. Retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Carmen Reynolds has filed a lawsuit against Florida Governor Christ, the Florida Attorney General, and Florida Surgeon General. The suit challenges a state statute governing public health. Ms. Reynolds opposes a statute that says a person can be forced to be tested, vaccinated, treated, examined, or quarantined for a communicable disease that have significant morbidity or mortality and present a severe danger to the public. She says that she's not against vaccines, but is against any provision in any state statute that says we must forego all of our rights, and, at the arbitrary whim of either our state government or our federal government, be subject to any and all force necessary to subject us to a vaccine. Reynolds was forced to retire as an Air Force instructor because of health issues. She believes her problems may have been caused by vaccinations she was required to take while in the military. She claims the statute is a clear violation of the Bill of Rights for the state of Florida and in the Florida Constitution. She is due in court this week. Get vaccinated or get fired. That's what the New York State Health Commissioner told healthcare workers. New York nurses, doctors, and technicians are angry and planning to protest a state regulation that requires them to get the swine flu vaccine. New York is presently the only state that is mandating healthcare workers to get the swine flu vaccine under the threat of job loss. But there are other states that are considering forced vaccinations for their healthcare workers as well. In a poll of 1,678 parents conducted by the University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital, 60% say they would not get their children immunized against the H1N1 virus. About half of the parents who said they'd pass on the H1N1 flu shot for their kids expressed concern about possible side effects of the vaccine. The Army is allowing the resignation of the first commissioned officer to be court-martialed for refusing to deploy to Iraq. Army Lieutenant Watada refused to deploy to Iraq in 2006, arguing that the war was illegal and that he would be party to war crimes. His court-martial ended in a mistrial in February of 2007. The Army sought a second court-martial, but a federal judge ruled that it would violate the constitutional protection against double jeopardy. He was granted a discharge on October 2nd under other than honorable conditions. It's not what Watada wanted, but he is grateful for the outcome. A tiny car company called Fisker, backed by former Vice President Al Gore, has just received a $529 million U.S. government loan to help build a hybrid sports car in Finland that will sell for about $89,000. Critics question why these types of vehicles aimed at the wealthiest customers are getting loans subsidized by taxpayers. Department of Energy officials spent months working with Fisker on its application, touring its Irvine, California and Pontiac, Michigan facilities, and test driving prototypes. Fisker's top investors include Kleiner Perkins, a veteran Silicon Valley venture capital firm, of which Al Gore is a partner. The FDIC's fund has slipped to 0.22% of insured deposits. That's below a congressionally mandated minimum of 1.15%. Bank accounts up to $250,000 are covered by the FDIC in case of fraud or failure. For every $100 in your account, they only have 22 cents to cover it. The FDIC is considering a plan to borrow billions from big banks to shore up the dwindling fund that insures regular deposit accounts. ABC News actually had a report exposing government waste. And no, it wasn't John Stossel. The expose, originally aired in April, reveals the millions of dollars Representative John Murtha steered to a Pennsylvania airport named in his honor. Part of the funding came out of the stimulus package, earmarks that Murtha added to bring the pork home. Worst of all, hardly anyone uses the airport. If you can stomach it, it's worth watching. The mainstream media does have good reporting once in a while, but who has the time to sit around and watch for it? Thanks for joining us this week. Help us inform America and send our link to your friends and family. From all of us at Informed Citizen News, see you next week.